Jesus, as we meet him in the Gospels, often taught by using images or pictures. In last week's Gospel, Jesus uses the image of a good shepherd. In today's Gospel, he uses the picture of a vine. But in both instances, Jesus is not being very original, for these pictures, you see, come from the Hebrew Scriptures, from what we now call the Old Testament. They come from the only Scriptures Jesus ever knew. But like a good rabbi, like a good teacher, Jesus takes these familiar pictures and reworks them. He gives them back to his audience to sop it up, as it were, and to be nourished by them. From Jesus we learn that he knew the Scriptures. Part of his discipline, his practice, was getting to know the sacred stories, images and pictures. From Jesus and all the Gospel writers, we learn that he did not make an idol of it, these sacred stories, but he used them as windows through which others could catch a fresh glimpse of God. If we want to dwell in him, if we want to make our home with him, I advise, get to know the Scriptures. Put yourself in a Bible study, in a small group that will sit regularly around pieces of Scripture. Get yourself a Philip, get yourself a guide, someone to help you understand what you are reading. And with this guide, this group, like a piece of bread, we break the Scriptures open. We interrogate them. We let them seep into our souls. We recognize that they are pieces of literature from two ancient communities, Israel and the primitive church. They were set in contexts far different to ours. From them we can learn what to do and also what not to do. And when you read Scripture, ask yourself constantly, what is the Spirit of God saying to me and to my context, to us and to our context? What is God saying in these words and beyond these words? Then, in the silence, learn to overhear the voice of God. Look at today's picture. I am the true vine and my Father is the gardener. Isn't it marvelous that God would get God's hands dirty for us as any gardener would? In this picture, God is on God's knees as any gardener would be, or stretching out to reach the furthest branch as any gardener would. In the Gospel, pruning is necessary, but it also brings about prolific growth. Don't be afraid if it is pruning time for you, your heart and soul. If it is pruning time for someone you love, let it happen. Surrender yourself to a far bigger outcome. Put yourself into God's presence every day. Learn to pray this ancient prayer. Here I am, Lord. And then be there. Don't be in the future. Don't be in the past. Be present. Be present to whatever is on your plate. Have the grace to let God tend to you, nurse and nourish you. Learn also. Learn to tend to others too. Sometimes the best medicine is to get up and get out of our own way. Make reaching out to others part of your practice too. Tend to them. Learn from God the gardener who gets God's hands dirty for love of you, for love of me. Let what we do be part of our practice too. Return to stillness and silence constantly and ask, what do you want with me, Lord? What do you want with me, Lord? And then be patient, like any gardener is. Transformation, change, dawn, Easter will come when it comes.